welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and thank you for being with us here on the program. I am so grateful for those of you who are listening and watching, whether you're listening on AM 1290, FM 96.9, you're listening on the live stream at richarddugan.com. You're listening to the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. Or you're watching on YouTube. The YouTube channel is, of course, Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan. Thank you so much for being a part of what we are doing here in our efforts to change the world. Our special guest is returning. A returning guest. Always love having returning guests because they're back again to give us more insight and information, and maybe in this case a little fun along the way. My guest today is returning. She is Melanie or Mel Salvatore-August, and it's a pleasure to have you back here to talk more. You shared with us the last time you were with us, of course, about initially we went all over the spectrum, but initially about how yoga can help one's immune system. And we have a new topic that I think is really appropriate for today and for what people are going through. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Richard. Happy to be here.
So the conversation today that we want to talk about, you kind of brought this up as we were discussing having you back on the program because you just had so much to say. Where are we going to? Where's step one in our path here for the next hour and a half? Maybe we'll see how that goes. Where are we going to start from the? I almost want to say from the yoga position. What yoga position are we starting with here?
Well, if we were to start from a yoga position, it's mountain pose. Do you know what mountain pose is, Richard?
No, I do not.
Mountain pose is standing in anatomical standard position, feet hip width, shoulders over the hips, and arms out to the side.
That seems kind of like an arrogant stance. I am better than you are.
No,
okay.
No, it's a neutral stance.
Neutral,
neutral
okay.
Stance.
Gotcha.
It's neutral. Now, if I'm puffing up my chest, throwing my shoulders back and going, come on, then maybe.
I got you.
We can do that one later. So if it was a pose, it would be mountain pose, and mountain pose is mountain pose because it's about being steady, grounded, resilient. And so I feel that maybe that's what we should talk about today. How do we, in a chaotic world, and a lot of times it's the macro and the micro, right? So the world feels really chaotic, and then our little tiny world within us, which is really big, feels really chaotic. Our relationships, our households, right. So how do we get grounded and steady so we can be resilient and weather all that change? So that's what I think we should talk about.
Well, let's start with that pose, that stance, the mountain stance of, sort of a position of strength, but at the same time, it seems to me like the observer is a good place as well, that if we were observing rather than up to our eyeballs in the experience, if you will, okay, yet we are, we're in the experience, how can we make that shift out or to that position of observer if we're going through it? Because that's probably the biggest challenge of all.
Yeah. So that's such an astute view as well. I think there's an aspect of just kind of naming it and becoming aware that you have the ability to observe. Just at that point, because so I don't know about everyone who's listening, but for me it's like that's the key point. Like if I'm in it, sometimes I forget that I can actually pull out of it and stop. And so I think even just like listening to something inspiring, tuning in to the show today, whatever it is, like just a reminder, uh, even posting a reminder for yourself, like on your mirror, comes up on your phone, right? Um, that you can pause, breathe, and observe and pull out
Okay.
what you're going to observe. Well, you know, who knows what you're going to observe, but that pause and breathe will give you some time.
The emotions, though, are still important. How and can you talk to us a little bit about how and why they are important in those experiences, even if we do take the pause and breathe and so forth to be the observer? Is that
Yeah.
is there a connection, or do we need to not permanently? Don't get me wrong, folks, but temporarily disconnect from our emotions
Mm.
in that
There's
time?
a lot in there, Richard. That's first I would say for me, and from my understanding, our emotions are information, right? So they are very important and not to be denied. They're key. They're key information. You might even call them arrows. Like they point, they tell you what's happening. Like, hey, look over here. You're angry because you've betrayed yourself, or right, like, or right, there's loss happening. That's why you feel grief. Like they're pointing directions for us to look. So I do think they're very important. At the same time, just like our thoughts are transient, they're ever changing, right? Our body's ever changing. So many aspects of ourself are constantly in flux. Our emotions are constantly in flux as well. And I feel like that's just an important understanding, because if we're like, I'm angry and that's our flag poster, or I'm sad and we hold on to it, or I'm never not going to be sad, so I'm therefore hopeless. I think it's important to understand that yes, they are to be observed, yes, they are to be listened to and respected, and they're transient. I lost you. What happened?
Now, when we start
Okay.
to process the information that comes through as the observer, and that's where we're going to kind of start here in terms of sort of recentering ourselves. We, we're a lot of times we're looking for that quick fix, and I realize that especially in the West and in the United States in particular, it's very quick. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if you've noticed this, if you've observed this or not. There are fewer computer commercials on television, but when there were, they were always promoting how much faster they were than the old models. And every new innovation, it was another gigahertz faster and another terabyte faster, or whatever, whatever the speed references or measurements are. But there is no quick fix through this process. It is ongoing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that, as you have probably experienced and you share with others, it literally is, as strange as it has always been to me when I hear, oh yes, the doctor, he has his own practice. Like, what do you mean practice? He's not that good at it? He's still practicing? But that's really the truth of the matter here for us, that we are constantly, and we need to be constantly practicing, don't we?
Yeah, I agree. And a yoga practice, the yogis called it a sadhana, which directly relates to practice, not a perfect, not a performance, not a demonstration. It's a practice. Um, and absolutely, I always every morning when I wake up, some level of like, oh, I get another chance today, right? I mean, there's still obviously there's more for me to learn, more for me to practice. So as long as I wake up, my practice is still happening.
I'm curious, how long have you been practicing?
My whole life.
Mhm. That's
For sure.
Melanie
Yeah.
Salvatore-August is my guest here on the program, and you are listening to, ladies and gentlemen, Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I always enjoy having folks back on the program to talk about the work that they are doing. Today, we're talking with Melanie Salvatore-August and the work that she is doing. You have quite a number of books out. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I think this applies in terms of where we're going today with this particular program, fierce kindness. It's hard to be kind sometimes because we get stuck in our emotions when things come up and then we react. And it's hard. So to be the observer, is that not the better place to be kind, fiercely kind, or is there a different definition that you'd like to share with us?
Gosh, again, Richard, I love all of that. Um, I guess I'll start with fiercely kind. What is fierce kindness? Fierce kindness to me is it maybe in its most direct way what it sounds like, right? To be truly kind, there needs to be a strength in that and a clarity, and that clarity actually can be radical in the sense of lots of times we're programmed, right, to cover up whatever truth is inside us or to kind of anesthetize. So it's asking us to deprogram and really get to like what is really happening here and get underneath the emotions, all the things that you've mentioned. But another aspect of fierce kindness, which I see is that the hardest place in my experience is to shift and be kind in our own heads. So for me, I can shift, make some space, and be kind to you, Richard,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully my partner. It depends on the day. And the hardest place it is for me to be kind is within my own head. So how I'm talking to myself. So for me, fierce kindness is self-loving kindness, which then simultaneously leads me to save a outward kindness and service in the world. So if I can truly shift how I talk to myself, the choices I make for how I take care of me as a being, then it will enable me to help others. So, and in fact, the more I help myself and help others at the same time, it almost creates a bigger effect, right? So if I'm just focusing on me, then that has a kind of delays it. And if I'm just ignoring myself and going to just do service, there is a certain kind of disconnection and lack of foundational power to what I'm doing. So I'm going to live it, and then I'm going to share it at the same time. So fierce kindness in that way.
That's rather interesting because I know a lot of people, they're very much into service. That's kind of what I might say would be my life. My life's purpose is to be of service. However, one cannot be 100% of service to others because one also has to take care of self.
100%.
And that is something I think that some people, they lose sight of and they think, oh, no, that's selfish. Help us to better understand the aspect, because I've been hearing this and I've been reading about it all over the place, about self-care. Again, some people would view that as being selfish. I don't have time for that. I've got to be doing all of these different things and on and on and on. and why that's so important, even to those people, whether they're caregivers or people who are volunteering, especially maybe the retirees, that kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think of, the get on the airplane and you're like, you put on your oxygen mask and then the person beside you. So I think in that the most straightforward terms is that you have to put on your oxygen mask. There's two people down if you don't. So, so that aspect, of course. Um, I also feel that there's a love and energy of healing feels one way, and fear and the energy that I'll call fear feels another way, and they have certain effects in the world, right? So no matter what we're saying, we our electromagnetic field and our thoughts create electromagnetic field. I mean, we have all these different instruments that can gauge that. It's real. It's not woo woo, right? Our electromagnetic field is what comes forward. So if you really want to be of service, you got to look within, because no matter what your words are saying or even your actions are trying to do, there is an authenticity that is needed, I think, to really be of service. So that occurs to me as well. It just, you have to put on your oxygen mask and then go to help others,
Yeah.
and you really want to be of service,
I
be
also know,
authentically.
yeah, I also know too that the first rule of survival is take care of number one. Again, it goes back to what you've already said with the air mask, oxygen mask. That if you don't take care of number one, how are you going to help 2, 3, and 4? You
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
I mean, there's
And it's not easy.
no. I right now I am seeing that scene from the movie Titanic, where Dawson, he's telling her, "No, it's all right. You're fine. You're okay. You just stay up there." And I was watching this one shtick, this comedy bit where she was laying on this huge piece of wood. There was more than enough room for 5 people, and he ends up going down. It's like, wait a minute, you know, and it's like,
Mhm.
it's really it's hard sometimes. In the things that I go through, and I'm sure you as well, as we go through our lives and we experience this with our relatives, our partners, our friends,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
even associates, maybe coworkers you've worked with for a long time, and they're kind of like family. They kind of get that way,
For sure.
and you can see, even though it's not really physically or visually apparent, you're aware of the destructive behavior of
Mhm.
others. And there's this, I don't know if you want to call it a paradox or catch
Mhm.
22,
Mhm.
but it's like, okay, they're free moral agents, they're adults. Okay, if they're not adult, if they're children, that's a whole other thing. But if they're
Yeah.
adults over 18, who am I? It's kind of like when I went through my first divorce. After the divorce was over, all of my family members said, "Oh yeah, well we knew." And I would go, "Then why didn't you say something?" Well, it wasn't. They would say it's not our place. I was like, "Oh, now after the fact, it's your place," kind of thing. And I wasn't critical, but but they are free moral agents, and they have to make their own way. What about the concept? And I'm sure you're familiar with that contract that we fill out, that we agree to when we come into this life.
Mhm.
Do you think that as someone who wants to help them through, wants to assist, facilitate, whatever word you want to use, you think maybe we might be interfering with their contractual agreements? Or, I mean, it's like, how do we know? Does that go back to, I better check inside, I better check in within?
Mm. I think so. I think so. And you know what also occurs to me, Richard, is can we actually really help if it's not the path? I mean, will it actually uh, will it be will you change somebody's path? My initial feeling is no, you won't change somebody's path. I mean, we can help each other, but it has to be like this mutual, it's a mutual dance and let's say somewhat soul agreement that maybe we're conscious of or most likely unconscious of. Um, and if that agreement isn't there and the dance won't happen or it's going to happen differently. And there's going to be maybe it's not what we think the outcome or think the effect will be. It's going to be something different and it'll be just as it needs to be.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. I'll use the phrase divine right timing.
I
Is
like that.
is another phrase one might use in terms of um, assisting, supporting, facilitating, again, whatever word you want to use. And that might be my path to do those kinds of things. But at the same time, would you say also that it takes some discretion, again, maybe that going within, to say, not in this instance, yes in this instance?
I think so. I think so. I mean, it brings me back to, you know, what is, and these are such blanket terms, what does love feel like? What does fear feel like?
I can
And does,
definitely tell you what fear feels like. Love,
mm,
so I question that sometimes because of some of the situations that I find myself in. It's like,
yeah.
am I sure this is love? I'm not 100% certain. I've already been through one divorce. I didn't have many
Yes.
girlfriends. That's okay.
Well, and that's like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about romantic love? We're talking about eros? Are we talking about like an unconditional connection of wholeness
Yeah,
just to life itself? Like, what are we talking about with love? And I think that that's also very important.
good
I'm
question.
talking a very kind of blanket, when you feel even just simply gratitude, what does that feel like? What is that resonant feeling in your physical body?
Yeah. Melanie
Hmm.
Salvatore-August is my guest, and you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's an extraordinary program that we have today here with Mel. And I am so thankful and grateful that she is a part of the program today because of the work that she has done. She's a former comedy writer, veteran yoga meditation teacher, Reiki master. Here, here. You're a mama of three, okay? And she's also the author of several books, Fierce Kindness, I mentioned earlier, Be a Positive Force for Change, Kitchen Yoga, Simple Home Practices to Transform Mind, Body, and Life. And of course, the Yoga to Support Immunity. It's a mind-body breathing guide to whole health. That's what we talked about in our last program. Do you find that genetics has anything to do with any of this? That you've heard this before, that two people can go through the same experience. One of them will come out maybe stronger, feeling more confident, more vibrant. The other person falls apart and may end up deciding to check out because they just couldn't handle it. And you just never know which one of those people you're going to be when a collective group of people goes through something like, let's say, the Vegas mass shooting several years back, or some of the school shootings, or an earthquake, or tornadoes,
Right.
and the list goes on.
Mhm.
Do you think that's more genetic, or do we have more? I don't want to use the word control because we have little control over much. Power. Do you think we have that kind of power to overcome, say, maybe our DNA, our genetics?
Mhm. I feel like this is a very rich conversation and just to like name it fully. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. Um, and and with that, very clearly, I can only just share what I think, right? My opinion, we
Right,
all have them.
right.
And I feel that, I do, I think it's fascinating because like our ancestors, so, we have our DNA, but then also our ancestors' experiences, from what I understand, I don't remember the name, but there's little markers in our DNA. That's not that changes the DNA, but actually like these markers within them. When there's a famine, when there, like these markers that have been passed on, experiences that our ancestors have that absolutely affect how we respond to things. Um, do I think it's 100% of how we respond and survive? No, I don't. If we were really looking at it like, okay, yes, it's DNA, and it's also your mental outlook, and it's also your current state of health, which has to do with both, and it's also your state of what's the word I want? Abundance, basically, or your there's a word that it'll come to me, but this aspect of, how much privilege do you have? I mean, we all, like, I know I'm sitting in a lot of privilege here, so like what comes and makes all of that resilience? And I think that it's a lot of different aspects of life coming together. Mhm.
Well, there's no question. Again, acknowledging, your credentials, as well as the lack thereof as well. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I was just curious about your perspective as a practitioner of the variety of different modalities that you utilize in the work that you do, working with people as well. You also have you founded the Fierce Kindness organization, Me Well Classroom, and people can join you daily at Yoga Works at Home platform. You can learn more, of course, at Melanie Salvatore August.com, which we will be linked to. Tell us a little bit about this particular work, especially the Fierce Kindness organization. Sounds like what we see on a regular basis. An act of kindness.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it is, an act of kindness. Um, really what, as I mentioned, fierce kindness is about, okay, how do you help yourself while helping other people at the same time? And so, a lot of times what our organizational does is go in and to help kids think differently, right? And or to bring groups of people together who maybe do have a lot of affluence of some way, and have them do something, whether it's physical exercise or coming together on mindset shift, and that they bring their resources together then to literally go take that resource and help. I mean, as simple as, clean, warm socks for our homeless community, that kind of thing. Like whatever we can do, it can be very small. It doesn't have to be so big, right?
Right.
The little things, that act of kindness, right? It really does make a huge difference. And so, looking at, where right now can you make a difference? And my question is, like, for any of us, is where right now, this moment, can you make a difference for yourself and therefore make a difference out in the world? And it could be simply right now, go drink a glass of water. I mean, you may think like, okay, Mel, how's that going to change the world? Well, one thing, it'll help change you. It will little shift a negative mind pattern into hopefully a self-care. And we go back to that word, mindset. I'm doing something good for myself here. I am literally clearing out the toxins, right? I'm
Mm.
literally saying I am worth love, and I'm pausing to drink this consciously, right? So go drink a glass of water. Get, get, that's your first micro habit, best foot forward, right? And then see what comes next as you go, okay, well, that was good. Now I'm going to take a deep breath.
You do it consciously,
Yeah.
intentionally.
Yes, intentionally. And then we go to the next and we go to the next. And you think, well, what happens next, Mel? Sit and be still. Honey, sit and be still. Now drink another glass of water. Now take another deep breath. Go use the bathroom consciously. Okay. Now, and things will start to come to you, right?
Do you find it easy to know your path? Have you found that easy over the years, or has it been a challenge to hear that guidance, that prompting, or maybe not to hear it because it's real easy to hear, to follow it?
No, it's such a great question. I well, and maybe this isn't fair to my indigenous friends, but like for many years, I would say, "Oh, it was a trail of tears." I lived in Los Angeles, and I moved to New York, and I'd go to New York, and I'd move back to LA, and so there was many years, 15 years or more, and my high school years, many years where I would say I was in despair. I was truly uh, lost,
Hmm.
and feeling lots of confusion about the world and where I fit in. And I say that, as a child, there was a clarity early on, um, and a very open heart. And I can look back and see where my idea of how to survive in the world shut down that heart.
Hmm.
So it took me many years to be, how can I be kind of in the world but not of the world?
Right.
And how can I literally, all the masks and all the layers I put on myself to protect myself, to blend in, they'll
Oh,
never know I'm here, right? It took, and for me, that's what yoga was. It was a help to peel away, and become that observer and get more clarity on, okay, well, who are you really, and where are you not honoring that? So it was a very big journey, and listening and hearing. I believe we're all clairvoyant, audiovoyant, sentient, which simply means, right, you have intuitive feelings about things, or you may even hear it in words, or you may get a flash. I call them holograms. You might just get like a vision in front of you. You're like, oh yeah, I imagined that, right? um I believe we all have those those tools, just like we can smell through our nose, and all that different, our normal, regular, tangible senses. And when I learned for many years of, when I heard or felt or saw and I disregarded, I got myself in deep trouble. And so after being in deep trouble, like, what was it? I can't think of his name. I mean, he's such a, like a icon, a teacher, beautiful. I'll think of his name. But he talks. He's passed now. You'd say, there's a hole. You walk by, you fall into the hole. You're like, oh, there's a hole there. You get back up. It takes you forever to get back up. You start walking on your journey again. You fall into that same hole. Oh, it takes a while. But you do that over and over and over again, and finally you're like, hey, there's a hole there. I'm not gonna go in it. And then you think you're on your way, and then you fall in again. But this time you get out of that hole so much faster, because you learn. So I've learned, after falling into the hole so many times, to listen more than not to listen. And now when I fall into that hole, I get out. I get out faster, um, because I have tools. And as circles are right back to, like, okay, just simply reminding yourself that you can get a big picture, you can pull out, right? That you have the ability to say, okay, what would this mean in 5 years? What would this mean if everything just disappeared? What would this mean for me? And get a view. And so that's why I go back to, like, maybe it's something very simple that you put on your mirror. It's a little
Hmm.
post-it, you know. Recently I heard someone say the 5 by 5 rule. I thought, 5 by 5 rule. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes on it now. Being upset or worried. And I thought, okay, that's, there is an aspect of that. If for you to look at forward in 5, you have to become an observer and you have to get out of that to be able to look.
It brings to mind one of the techniques that I know a lot of people will use, especially when they are taking care of someone who's going through a terrific situation, an illness or what have you.
Yeah.
And the technique is to post all kinds of little notes all over the place, on the mirrors, in the cupboards, in the underwear drawer, in the silverware drawer, maybe in the dishwasher before you wash, but just in the cabinets, in the cupboards, and maybe in the coat pocket, and on and on and on and on, of encouragement, of support, of inspiration. Just saying, hey, look, you're not alone, and so forth. The other thing that came to my mind when you mentioned the whole was this State of the Union speech. I don't know that this was actually a real speech, but this was the way it was phrased. The nation as a whole is prosperous. That is not to say the whole nation is prosperous, but as a whole, it is prosperous. Have you ever seen a prosperous whole? And, you sometimes wonder, okay, where's this stuff come from? But I think about that, and I'm thinking the person that you might be thinking of, and I'm just intuiting this, Wayne Dyer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yeah.
And I think, too, that this whole aspect of the falling in the hole, you think about it from the standpoint of, okay, is this part of my path? Is this part of my contract? And if so, what am I supposed to learn about falling in this hole? And maybe it's not to get out of the hole. Maybe it's to dig down deeper or dig laterally and see where it takes me. And so, I mean, most of the time we think, got to get out of the hole. Who says? I mean, maybe for a time it might be kind of a nice place to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's when we start to look at that hole as literal, and there's only ways that you get out of it.
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying, which is super helpful, I think, Richard, which is, what is this here to teach me?
Yeah.
Right. And that question, what is this here to teach me, also gives you perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It also pulls you out of being in the gerbil's wheel of reaction.
Yeah.
Right. So what is this here to teach me? That's a wonderful tool. And I think sometimes it is, if you're used to jumping out. You're used to jumping out. Like if I'm trying to get out, maybe I should be going through this.
Mm-hmm.
To this unknown place on the other side. Yeah.
Well, I interviewed a gentleman maybe a year or so ago, and he had his stomach removed because of cancer. He was still alive. He was still able to get nourishment and so forth. And I asked him the question about the stomach cancer and the removal of his stomach and so forth. And I said, have you spent any time thinking about why? Not so much why you chose this. What events in your past have triggered this? And do you know that he had never thought about it? And then within the context of the interview, he began to reveal a little bit about his childhood and dinner table and the food and these kinds of things. That's when we become the observer, I think, even more so, isn't it? When we start not so much to question, and I like to stay away from the word why. I like the phrase better, what is this supposed to teach? What am I supposed to learn from this? What life lesson am I supposed to get out of this?
Which is actually a gift.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Melanie Salvatore-August, my guest, and you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. MelanieSalvatore-August.com is the website. I encourage you to go there as we continue talking with her. Mel is our guest here on the program, and I have to say that as we were talking there, and you mentioned about what we're to learn from this particular experience, I've even been able to put into great context for me, maybe not so much for my brother or sisters, the passing of my eldest sister back in late March 2022, and realizing that though there was a sadness at not being able to look back and have spent more time, even on the phone, because she lived in Arizona, I lived here, but when I kind of say, you know what, you did what you did, and it's okay. And you had the conversation that you wanted to have with her when you did, and you were her brother and she was your sister, and you had that relationship, da da da. And so, you don't need to dwell and wallow in what if. But looking at all of the things that she gave me over the years, whether it was in person or remotely, just by her being, not being there, but just by her being. And I'm so grateful that I have this the video of the memorial with all of the pictures that her husband took. Thousands and thousands of pictures he took. He only had about 400 that he showed at the memorial. I think we only got about a 3 to 5 second view of each one. But now at least I can stop the video and I can look at those pictures. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm in the emotion of shall we say, compassion, of love for my sister. But at the same time, I do feel a little bit like the observer, like, wow, this person was here in the physical, isn't anymore in the physical, but is still here. And so I know that I remember one or two people that have passed that where I got very, very emotional over, and others, and who I knew, who I just kind of looked around going, wow, now they're everywhere. They're watching everything. How cool is that? I wonder what that's like. And that's why that subject has always been a curiosity to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have lost, if you will, if you want to put it this way, the potential of over 1 million people just over the virus that ran across this globe.
Yeah.
But have we really lost them? And I think that's one of the other aspects of the awareness of being the observer, right? Is if, as you said before, we have that, and I'm just going to use the one term, sixth sense, of all of the characteristics that you described. If that's the case, then we're in communion with them all the time. So there's really nothing lost, is there?
No, and it's beautifully put. I mean, the yogis kind of this aspect of, okay, what is changing? I mentioned everything that's changing. Our mind's changing, our body's changing, our energy's changing, right? It's all changing. And what is not changing in the yogi's view is spirit or soul, or changeless being, right? And it occurs to me to share that, because it's like, that's what is real and what is unreal. What is real is that aspect of us that is not yes, it's embodied, and then it is not embodied. I'm going to take off the personality known as Belle. I'm going to move out of this body, but I will continue without the container. And I believe that's really what you're saying. Just because the container is gone does not mean that the consciousness is gone. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Is that Newton's law? It's.
I'm not sure whose law it is. There's some universal law somewhere in the back pages there. But it is true, that energy will always be energy. It will just be transformed. And everything is temporary with that one exception, energy. The form of energy is temporary. And it's like you said, the 5x5 rule, you could pretty much say that about every situation you come across. Because if not in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, it will have changed.
Yes.
So much for the 5 years. Okay, so, I will never forget, and I still have the poster. I was given at 21. Apparently, I exhibited the high-end aspects of Irishness, of worry. And I was given this poster with this poem that briefly says, "Why worry? You're either going to stay healthy or you're going to get sick. If you stay healthy, you have nothing to worry about. If you get sick, you only have two things to worry about. You're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. If you get better, you have nothing to worry about. If you get worse, you only have two things to worry about. You're either going to live or you're going to die. If you live, you have nothing to worry about. If you die, you only have two things to worry about. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you have nothing to worry about. If you go to hell, you're going to be too damn busy shaking hands with friends to worry." And I thought, okay, that's rather apropos. Don't relish the idea of shaking hands with friends in hell, but the point is well made that we allow ourselves to get caught up. And I would think that the outside world distractions, you can call it the media, you can call it social media, whatever you want, they don't help. Most social media doesn't help. I would say that LinkedIn, I think that LinkedIn helps in a big way. I really do. Because I love many of the videos and many of the postings of poems and stories of people who have come through incredible adversity and diversity, if you will. What about your life and the diversity that you have been faced with over the short time you've been on this planet?
Mm. In what aspects, Richard? Because, like everybody, even the most blessed lives, if you look in there is always adversity, right? Always.
Hmm.
So in what aspect? Can you give me a little more
Well,
specific?
how about health and well-being or
Mm.
family dynamics? I myself, I don't have those holiday dinners where you got a food fight going and arguments and people screaming and yelling across the table. Um, and apparently I have a sister who is now going to join the the no gallbladder club. She will make number 6 in our family of 8,
Oh. Mm.
but they're catching it early.
Oh, that's just good. Mhm.
So, I mean, I've got my health conditions, and I had legal blindness until I was 36, and so forth and so on. So, what about you in terms of those challenges that were set before you, or you set before yourself,
Mhm.
that maybe at the time you didn't think, I can't make it through here, but the reality was you kind of knew inside, yeah, I can do this.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I actually feel like I've had I've had a lot. I've had my share. It makes me go to the probably one of the most influential, and I don't know if I've unpacked it completely.
Hmm.
So, um, and that, I also had vision issues as a baby and had a couple operations before I was one. And maybe you had some of this going on, but I wore an eye patch for many years, and sometimes for like 8 to 10 hours a day. And so it's very interesting, in the scheme of what could be hardship, right? That it's like, well, come on, I was still eating. I had you know, a stable home, but you wore a boohoo, you wore an eye patch. But it's fascinating how that patching my kind of good eye and my bad eye that couldn't see and I just remember sweat pouring down my face and the smell of the glue of the patch and kids were mean
Oh,
and just always just, just feeling like the world was so difficult and I couldn't see. And I was not like a fast-lipped kind of child. I was really soft and gushy on the outside and the inside. So it's like I always think of like a turtle without any shell and patch. And so, I remember, being very sad and being very discouraged. And I look back now and I think I I learned to inner see. My outer eyes were closed, but my inner eyes developed and my ability to hear developed. Um, and and also be resilient and to I mean, it was a slow process, but to be like, okay, how many times are you going to look out for affirmation? How many times are you going to look to everyone else to tell you that you're okay? And why don't you look within and uh, create peace? And I'd say that started. I mean, I started being patched when I was 2, and I was patched probably until I was 8 or 9, something like that. So it was very formidable
mm,
years, which I say we have some of that in common, this aspect of eyes.
yeah.
And I feel like, so I don't know if I answered your question because there's plenty of things, having 3 boys and birthing children and taking care of them and Hashimoto thyroiditis and feeling all these different things that can happen. And I think the most formidable is not being able to see.
Well, I can tell you that I don't recall ever a time in school, in spite of the bullying and everything, and I wore those thick bottle bottom type glasses and carried the
Mm,
large print books around, that I ever wished that I had normal sight. I don't think I ever, I think it was more I wish they would just leave me alone.
sure.
That was the wish. But I did real good in track and field. It's flight or fright, flight or
Yep.
fight. I didn't want to fight, so, zoom. And I did win many awards in the track and field category at PE. So there you go. It is very interesting. And by you mentioned Hashimoto's. It must be a lot more common because I have an author that I'm going to be talking with about that. And I'm going, yeah, I have that too, but I'm not taking any medication for it because apparently it's not as pronounced. And of course, I'm trying to figure out, well, what does it do or doesn't do or how does it affect you? And it's like, I don't know. All I know is I've been told. This is the other thing. That's what I was told I have.
Right.
Okay? They drew blood. They ran a bunch of tests. You got this. Oh, and you have this. All right. Well, I guess I have to believe you because I have no refuting evidence to say that I don't. So, they could tell me I was 8 feet tall for all I know, and it's like, oh, okay, until I can get some refuting evidence, like a proper ruler or what have you. But it is interesting how the different things that come in, the challenges. I like to refer to them as challenges, not matter of fact, early on, I would refer to my legal blindness as a perceived limitation.
Mhm.
It's only a limitation if you allow it to be.
100%.
You know?
100%. And I would say that, you don't have Hashimoto, maybe healing through it,
Oh, now there you go.
experiencing it right now,
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
I
But
am
for
only
me, I don't have it. I'm healing through it.
okay. I'll take that. My brother, I don't know that he does, although it might be hereditary. But all I know is when I was visiting my parents during the time of my sister's memorial, he made the comment one morning that, "Oh, I have to go take my thyroid medication before I can eat, and I have
Mhm.
to wait, I guess, 30 minutes or whatever it is."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm thinking, okay, I have that same thing as far as my doctor telling me, but I'm not taking anything, so I don't know, maybe something totally different. But it's just fascinating how these things come up. I even told my doctor when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and he said, "Richard, it's going to be a long road. Going to be a long road for you, Richard." I said, no, it's not, because I know how I got here. And a month and a half later, it was back to normal.
Mm.
And I've maintained, matter of fact, I just checked it as of this interview. I just checked it the other day, and I don't check it regularly anymore because it's been nearly 2 years, and I don't drink sodas anymore. 133, no problem. No problem.
Great. That's great.
So when we start talking about these different challenges, whether they be biological, physiological, etc.,
Mhm.
or where we live, where we work, how I know we talked about being the observer. Is that maybe the key place where we can change our perspective of the workplace, the home place, the playground, wherever it is that we are facing those challenges?
I do. I believe it's the first step. The first step. Um, then the next step is, in my view, is choosing a skilled action. That's the next step.
Hmm.
So to choose a skilled action, right, is very debatable if something's skilled or not skilled. It has a lot of different aspects to it, depending on your situation, depending on who you are. But the best skilled action that we intentionally, consciously choose.
Intention is huge too. I mean, what we've just been talking about. But this kind of goes back to what we talked about in our first interview, not just about the immune system, but about our chemistry. Is from your perspective, and again, I know you're not a doctor, okay, but you have other modalities that you utilize and you work with a lot of different people.
Mhm.
Do you think that our spiritual energy, if you will, helps us to overcome the chemistry that maybe we have because we haven't been putting the right elements in to generate the right kind of chemistry and so on and so forth? So that the chemists inside, the pharmacy inside, can generate the right kinds of, I'm not even sure what words I want to use, dopamines and this and that and the other thing for a healthy life and a good outlook and attitude. Do you think our spiritual energy can overcome those obstacles or those particular physiological challenges?
I do, and I do, and I think it's what we're eating on all the different layers of our awareness, that
Ah,
what we're consuming, physically, what we're consuming, food, water. What are we watching?
mm-hmm.
What are we listening to? Where are we spending our time? And so I think that if all of those consumptions
Mm-hmm.
and actions that go with those consumptions are honoring that spiritual call, I think that there's a fantastic chance that we are walking miracles. We are they're like, I don't believe in miracles. You are a miracle. It's like, I don't
Yeah,
believe in humans.
yeah,
I don't believe that thought creates material, right? Of course, everything you're looking at was thought. You're living in it, right? So I do believe it's absolutely possible, and most often happening. I think it's happening to us all the time. um my next thought is like, well, what if that's not the soul's contract? It's like,
mhm.
yeah, I mean, I you carry a high vibration. uh I my sense is I may carry a high vibration. Is it make me impermeable to pain? Of course not. There's pain and suffering, and there's reasons why I'm here, and I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, and it may be my end of my soul's business here. And so there I go.
I used to think, speaking of immunity, I used to think I was very much aware of what the advertising industry was doing, specifically on television. As a kid growing up, believe it or not, I knew what they were doing. I know exactly what they're doing, because if it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. I mean, that's really the scenario. And I told myself, I'm not buying into this. I'm not going to say that I didn't over certain periods of time and in different places. But for the most part, it's like, wait a minute, I don't need that. I'm doing fine with this over here. It's like I'm still working with I'm still working with a Galaxy S7 phone from Samsung. All right. So this has got to be what, 5, 6, maybe 7 or more years old. Still doing what I want. I have a computer at home that's still running Windows XP. And it still works. Okay? Although I now have a laptop that has Windows 10, but that's a whole other story, because that's what was available. But it just seems as though, we get caught up in that whole process. And there is a way to break that just by basically saying no. And I think, too, about the law of attraction, i.e. The Secret. I remember an interview I was doing where the guest said that The Secret, they left out one important element. And you actually brought it up. And that is that really for my best and highest good? Is that really part of my path? Or is it my ego wanting that? And now, it's not to say that you couldn't have those things, even if it was your ego. I have to say that for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with my life the way it is, and the things that I have in it, and the people, most importantly, the people I have in it. And I don't need to constantly be upgrading to the latest and greatest, whatever it is. I still haven't understood. When I was a kid growing up, we wore blue jeans, my brother and I wore blue jeans, and we'd come home and we'd rip the knees. You know what my mom would do?
Sew them up.
No, she'd take us to the store to buy new ones.
Oh.
Now you go to the store and you pay several $100s to buy ripped blue jeans, and I just don't. I don't understand that. Now, I think my mom, she did from time to time. She did sew them up. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, really, that's the style? Okay, all right. I will pass. I will not pass judgment. I will just let it ride. But it just seemed odd to me, one of those.
What I really hear you saying is you're talking value system.
Yeah.
So in any given, that's why it's so fascinating to have conversations with, other humans, because, each of us come with our own value system and our own understanding of whatever anything means. And it may be different, than the other person. And it's like, so, what is the value system? And maybe the value system, I just talk about myself. My value system is connection and kind of like a stability and spaciousness, which I'll call harmony. Like I very, very much value what the yogis called samtosha, and you use the word contentment. Samtosha means contentment. Like to just be content with where I am and be steady enough that I can be present and enjoy what is. Those are my value systems. So I don't know, where we take us, the greatest, the best, all these, it's like really depends on the value system.
Yeah. And I think it also shows what individuals really do value. And some people do value the material things. All right. And again, no judgment. If that's what you value, fine. I don't. I value the people that are in my life. I was asked by a gentleman who was visiting from Northern Ireland, and we got to talking a little bit, and I told him how much I loved the country. I loved being there. He says, well, what is it? What's the one thing that you love most? And I said, it's the people. And he says, everybody I have ever talked with, and I've asked that same question, has had exactly the same answer. because there's something about the Irish people, you know. And I myself, my biggest dream is to live there the rest of my life. And one day that will happen. You know, it seems like it's taking a long time, but you know what?
You never know, right?
You never know.
Can happen very quickly. You'll be like, oh, it's so slow, and then suddenly it's sped up.
I didn't know I was going to live in Santa Barbara. I thought I was going to live the rest of my life in that sweltering heat of Phoenix, Arizona, bicycling around. I didn't know that I was going to get a lens implant at 36, and then not long after that, get a driver's license and drive. And now I'm driving a truck, pulling a travel trailer, and all of this kind of stuff. We just don't know what's going to happen. And to be open to the possibilities, that's also another element, too, in terms of being the observer, right? Is to be open to whatever comes. And even if nothing comes, being open to that too. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just feel like whoever's listening, if you feel things are hopeless, I feel like it's a trick of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And to understand that mind is changeable, and that you're not your mind. You're more than your mind. And that's when we're talking about observing, we are talking about connecting in the aspect of you that is beyond the chatter of the mind. And remember, you can change your mind. One of the first things we learn as a 2-year-old, I changed my mind. No. Let's remember, I changed my mind.
I changed my mind. As opposed to mine, it's mine. You know, that's the 2-year-old. But you shift out of that into I changed my mind. It's not mine. We're talking with Melanie Salvatore. August, the month of August, as the 8th month of the year. We certainly hope that it doesn't take me that long next time to remember her name. We were talking so much. It's just like I know you so well now, and yet I don't need a name. She's nameless. It's not the name not to be uttered. You know, her name is not Voldemort. But we are so glad that you are with us here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I want to thank you so much, Melanie, for joining us here on the program. Melanie Salvatore-August. And MelanieSalvatoreAugust.com is the website. She has a number of books that are available for you, some other projects and classes, and she has the fear, what was that again? The
Fierce
Kindness Organization and Melwell Classroom. Tell us,
turning into the Melwell Homestead, because I'm in the end process of building my own full-size studio, my own indoor and then my own outdoor platform, and it's on my own little homestead here in Northern California. So
oh my gosh.
I do everything virtual right now, but eventually there'll be opportunities to pop in and work with me in person if desired, right? So, but I do, like, every day, I work with groups and I work with individuals, and in a practical way, like how do we get grounded? You, not the idea of you, right? And then how do we create simple steps that help you create more skill and feel better?
I love talking with folks like you who are in the process of making not only changes in self, but in helping others to do the same who desire to do so. And that's a key right there. It's like you said before, you know, people have got to want to do this. And that's when you tap into that spiritual energy, regardless. And I say this regardless of the chemistry, because unfortunately we do have, a general food supply that is not that good for us. It's not giving us what we want. But we also have other food supplies, like I love the farmers markets, for example, like what we have here in Santa Barbara. I know you have them in Northern California. The farmers are growing what I like to call food. 150 years ago, that's all they grew. Now we call it organic food, okay? But it was just food 150 years ago. And that helps the laboratories and all of that that's within us to develop and create and manufacture, if you will, all of the wonderful elements that make us biochemically who we are, that helps our brain to function in a way that allows us to process the information that we take in through all of our senses, including that inner voice, if you will, so that we can hopefully follow the promptings of that inner voice. And I thank you so much for being a part of that.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, all the work you do, all the love you share in the world.
Well, I thank you for that. And I do have 3 final questions that I did ask you at the end of the last program. I like to ask every time because the answers do change. However, before I do, I want to let you know how much I appreciate you listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices. To help make your dreams come true, we are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And you can listen at richarddugan.com. The podcasts are at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the internet. And thank you for those who are reposting those interviews. We also are on YouTube, the channel Richard Dugan and Tell Me Your Story. We hope that you'll subscribe to the podcast and the videocast, because when you do, it's not about adding more subscribers to my podcast or videocast. I don't care. If there was another way for you to be notified that there's a new interview up on those platforms, I would use it in a heartbeat. But the best way is if you subscribe, and that way every time a new guest comes along and we post it, boom, you're going to be notified. So please subscribe so that can take place. I should let you know that I'm on Twitter as well. Richard Dugan, at Richard Dugan, I believe is how that's done. So I post, every time I post a podcast, I let the Twitter universe know that a new interview has been posted. And we also ask you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, as we ask you to go within, as we've been talking about with Mel here on the program, to spend time listening to that still small voice and follow the promptings, okay? And then if you can help us out financially, we would be so grateful. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. So with that all being said, we now go to our final 3 questions, and we're going to ask them in this order. First of all, who is Melanie Salvatore-August?
A being of light.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
Insight, joy within me and others.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
To live and inspire others to live in joy.
Well, again, I thank you so much for not only sharing your time and your story, but your smile. I thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I am listening.